Hey everyone, I'm Red Team Beaver and welcome back to day 21 of the Advent of Cyber 3 by TryHackMe. Today's challenge, we will look at the ways that we can identify malicious files and basically using pattern identification, basically. And to do so, we're going to be using Yara. Yara is not a tool I was familiar with before, and I came to realize that it's actually quite a strong tool and quite a fun tool to use as well. So let's dive right into it. So what is Yara? Well, Yara basically can help in categorizing malware in different malware families, but most importantly, it can also be used as a detection aid for malware analysis. So how does it work? Well, Yara will basically use various strings or X strings that could be maybe present inside a malware, and then according to some conditions that you will write yourself, it will basically tell you, yes, this is malicious, or no, this is not, basically, based on what you're writing, right? So, of course, your rules need to be specific to one type of malware, I guess. But I guess it can get way more complex than this, right? And you can have one rule to rule them all. But I haven't dove into it. So, basically, there's different sections on, like inside a rule, there's meta, and meta seems to be about like different various information about the other and what the rule is all about. And then the meat of it is the strings and the conditions. So the strings is basically the strings we want to match in our Yara rule, right? And these strings will basically work as variables, and you declare them like this. So for example, a text string will be a text string, and a hex string will be hexes. And basically, these variables can be used inside of conditions. And conditions are basically Boolean expressions. So you can use and or not. And basically, if you use condition A and condition B, well, it needs that all statements need to be true in order for the condition to be true. But if you have an or statement, for example, well, it can be either or, right? So if one is true but two is not true, well, it's still true, like the statement will be true. For example, if you do a not, well, it's going to basically reverse the statement. So basically, today we will need to write our own rule to detect the test file that we worked with yesterday. So if you haven't worked with the test file yesterday, I do invite you to watch the video, because it's quite interesting to see that, you know, this test file is quote unquote malware, even though it's just a string. So let's dive right into the practical aspect and basically just look at it from a practical perspective. All right, so for the practical part, just make sure that the machine is launched and that you are showing to the split view. As always, I will use the full screen mode instead, just because I prefer this, and I will then close the split mode. So sadly for today, I won't be able to do the questions as you guys do them, just because, well, I did them already because I recorded with my mic turned off. So that's my first mistake. So sorry guys, I didn't know about that, so I won't be able to answer them as we go, but still, you know, you'll get the answers as we go. So I won't show you the answers, not to spoil you, but basically the first question will require you to actually copy this rule file into your machine. So I will show you how I did it right here. So it doesn't really matter what the kind of spacing that you do. I did tabs, and I called basically the rule EICAR Yara. The only modification I did was I put this curly bracket to the underneath, just because I thought it was prettier, and because that's how I'm used to dealing with these brackets. But yeah, so basically take some time to copy it and just make sure that here, so here is actually the test I did for you guys, but it's actually a capital O that you need here. I forgot to change it because it's one of the questions. So this is capital O and not a 0. So be careful about that, because on here it looks like a 0, but it's not a 0, it's a capital O. So what we need to do is actually to do this and then join me back once you have done editing your rule. So once your rule is written, just make sure that it works by doing the following command, right? So go to your desktop on your Ubuntu machine, and then do Yara, provide the EICAR Yara rule, and then provide the test file. Now, as we saw previously, if you have an output, it means that it worked, right? So if the rule is a hit, the output will look like this. But if the rule is a miss, there won't be any output, right? So, oops. So make sure that you have output here. And if you have an output, it means that your rule is working as intended for now. And then we'll mess around with it later on. So what we can do now is actually read the first question. So the first question requires us to change the text string in the hey variable from x50 to x50, which is what I had before, right? So if I were to do this, right, and if I were to run the rule again, it won't work. Why won't it work? Well, it's because my condition is not being respected, right? The condition is about me having x50 and antivirus and EICAR and test, right, inside of it. So, and also the reason why I switched antivirus and EICAR was to show you guys that we don't need to have it in order. Like, so if we're to look at the test file, we don't need to have it like A, B, C, and D in order in the test file. So we have x50 here, x50, sorry, then we have EICAR, then we have antivirus, and then we have test. However, it doesn't matter which order this is, right? Because it only looks that the string is present inside of the file. So that was a side note. So basically the reason why it doesn't work here, it's because we have x50 and it's looking for a AND operator. So we need to have 50 antivirus, EICAR, and test. However, because we don't have x50, it doesn't work, right? We have one false, which makes everything go false. So how can we fix it? Well, if we were to put the OR statement, if you remember in the theory part, OR statements, basically you need one or the other to be true, and the statement is going to be true. So now we have, okay, do we have x50 or do we have, for example, antivirus? Well, the answer is yes, we have one or the other. And in this case, we don't have x50, but we have antivirus, right? So that's the operator that we need to change. It's AND to OR. And that's the answer right here, right? So if we were to only make a change to the first boolean, actually, see, you guys are old. You can look at the questions. I don't care if you just copy them, but you need to understand, right, to be good. So the first operator that we need to change is OR. So what option is using the Yara command in order to list down the metadata of the rules that are to hit the file? So for example, now this rule is still valid. So let's apply what we learned actually in the past and to -m. So -m will actually, oops, why is this not working? Oh, I didn't save it, my bad. So -m basically will pull down the metadata, and we actually saw it right here, right? So if we use the -m option, it will return the metadata when a rule is hit. Great. So now that we have -m, what section contains information about the author of the Yara rule? Well, that's quite obvious, right? It's a metadata, and we can actually have the proof in the theory aspect right down here, right? So inside metadata, we see that we identified the author. Great. And we actually did it also in our rule right here, RTV for Red Team Beaver. So what option is used to print only rules that did not hit? Now, this option, -n, is actually can be found inside of the documentation, but when I was reading the documentation, I thought it was quite lengthy and not like it didn't give me a nice list of the options. What I did was I sudo apt get install Yara-y. Now doing so will actually install Yara on your machine. And what you can do after that is actually man Yara, which will show you a very nice list of all of the options that you have. So, and in our case, is rule what option is used to print rules that did not hit is -n, right? Rules that doesn't apply. How can we test that? Well, for example, So our rule here is called EICAR Yara, right? So what we can do is if we put this back to an AND statement, right? This isn't gonna work, right? Let's remove this. But this statement is not gonna work, right? Because we have x50 instead of x50. So this doesn't work. So if we were to use -n here, well, it would tell us that EICAR Yara, so the rule EICAR Yara right here, doesn't work against test file because, well, it's not valid, right? The condition is false here. So that's why -n is useful. So next, what we can do is change the string value again to x50, which we already did, and then do the command with the -c option. So what is the result? Well, if we're to replace -n with -c, we'll see that the answer is 0. So answering with 0 will actually complete day 21 for you guys, and I hope you learned something, and I will see you in the outro. Thank you guys so much for watching day 21 of the Advent of Cyber 3 by TryHackMe. I hope you learned something. Today was quite interesting. I didn't know about Yara, and I think I already mentioned this, but it's quite cool to see the uses of such a tool. So I hope you learned something. If you liked the video, consider subscribing and liking the video. It does help me a lot, actually. You may not know about it, but it always gives me a nice boost of motivation when I see new subs and new comments on videos. So don't hesitate. I read all the comments and I try to reply to all of them. So, well, actually do reply to all of them. I have like 3 comments in my videos. So I hope you enjoyed. I will see you tomorrow for day 22. We're reaching the end, but I hope you enjoyed the adventure so far, and we still have 3 days left. Bye bye.